I've been fasting for 3 days. I think I'm on hour 56 or something. And
Lord help us.
Lord help us all. COVID-19, week 8 quarantine. This is an episode. Brain's not working. This is an episode all about
Plants that can kill you.
plants that can kill you. So in the Pacific Northwest, if you're going to forage the plants that you absolutely must know.
Let me tell you about the situation going on up inside my head today. My mind is running round in circles trying to make sense of the people who are running everything today. All these politicians tweeting, got their message on repeat and try dividing us with fear and hate.
That led to a deep dive into the scientific literature about people that have died during foraging, especially in this area. All over the U.S. for that matter, but especially in this area. And then we're going to kind of dig into these numbers throughout the course of the day. And then we're going to show you those plants that you absolutely have to know.
Help make you feel comfortable to go out and forage food and know that you're not going to get sick.
Or not kill yourself, at least.
Yeah.
So, brain's not working still. It'll come to me. I'm a little slower than normal. I was listening to a podcast, and on that podcast, it was talking about. Stop laughing at me. On that podcast, it was talking about how when you're battling against something, you want to speak to whatever that something fears. And so, when you're talking about foraging, people's fear around foraging is often that they're going to get sick or they're going to die.
Yeah.
And so we want to speak to that.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know where I was going with that. I do know where I was going with that. I remembered now. So what I did, I pulled up, I looked at the AAPC. So this is like the one kind of body that tracks poisoning across the U.S. So the American Association of Poison Control Centers. Mm-hmm. So anyone that calls into the Poison Control Center, if there's hospitalizations that need poison information, so this is like the central agency that collects all this data. So in 35 years, now this might be briefly understated because there could be people that die and like never made it to the hospital, or like it didn't somehow trickle down to the Poison Control Center in any format. But in 35 years, we've had 86 deaths.
86?
86. Now.
In 35 years.
86. That's
years.
all plant-related deaths. Okay? So that's the vast majority of these, and that you can look at this, you can look at the numbers a little bit differently, but the majority, at least 50%, if not more, and it's probably closer to the 70% range, are intentional. Meaning, there's really two categories that those fall into. One, suicide. So people intentionally ingesting plants to kill themselves. Very sad. The reality is suicide is a problem in this country, in other countries across the world, and the reality is it's super sad, and we're spiritually sick. And so we're going to put up the suicide prevention hotline number, just so we make sure we have that in the comments. If you're feeling suicidal, I love you. It gets better. Makes me want to cry.
Let's move on.
So that's one portion of the intentional. The other intentional is, when you take a guess, don't say it. What would be the other reason people intentionally take plants that may be questionable?
I don't know.
Yes, we're doing something right. He doesn't know.
I do.
To get high. And so these are plants like the angel's trumpet, the brumangias, kratom, I don't know how you say it. So other psychedelics or otherwise, types of plants that people are trying to take to get high.
Yeah.
And so oftentimes they'll ingest more than safe. They're looking to get a buzz or whatever it is. And so of those 86 deaths, at least 50, probably closer to 70%, have been suicides and people trying to get high.
So not even going out to go find something to eat.
Right.
It's intentional.
Now,
Okay.
of the remaining deaths,
So the remaining 40 to 30%.
or less,
Okay.
depending on how you look at the numbers, of the remaining deaths, the balance of those deaths are so unintentional, so they ingested plant matter or the wrong plant. So though we would lump foraging in that, but the majority of those unintentional, are houseplants. So things like the spathiphyllum, which we have growing at our house.
I got it for Mother's Day.
What's the one Christmas time plant?
Poinsettia.
Poinsettia, another common one of the top 25. So a lot of people get poisoned. Not a lot, a minuscule number in the scheme of things, but it's more common to get poisoned by a house plant than it would be to get poisoned by a foraged plant.
Okay.
So in the last 35 years, I've been able to find just like a handful of plants that have actually killed people. And of those handful of plants, I've only found 2, and this is excluding trying to get high off plants. Okay, so this is like foraged plants that people have mistaken. 2 in the Pacific Northwest. Stay with us, and we're gonna talk all about what those 2 plants are. Now, before we go, let's just talk percentage-wise. In the U.S., the chance you have of dying from a plant, of ingesting a plant and dying from it, even if you are trying to get high off plants, whatever, lump them in too, even if you are just eating house plants, whatever it is, the chance you have of dying from a plant in the United States is 0.00003%. That's the chance you have of dying from a plant if you live in the U.S. Okay, to put that in perspective, you have a 0.00045% chance of getting killed and eaten by a bear. So 1.5 times greater chance of getting killed and eaten by a bear. And you have a 5 times greater chance of getting struck by lightning.
That's so crazy. And you know, if you think about it, lots of like lettuces and stuff are getting recalled at the grocery store all the time.
Another good point. So like, yeah, so the chance of you getting sick from a plant is minuscule compared to other stuff.
Yeah.
Now, if you're a forager and you're putting yourself in that high risk category, right? Because you're out there eating more plants than the average person would, multiply it by 1,000, multiply it 10,000. It's still a minuscule percentage that you're going to be harmed.
Hey, just know what you're going out for.
Exactly. Like, do some basic things, like starting with identify the plant you're going to eat.
And make sure you just know the plants that really will do basic harm. You know, like these 2 plants that we're going to show you, if you know those.
You've ruled out.
Not saying that you can't get something that's going to like upset your stomach or make you, you know, not feel good, but at least you're not going to die if you know these 2 plants.
And what should you do before you eat a plant?
Identify it.
Or you may die in the
You're
woods.
supposed to say that with me.
Dad's brain isn't working.
All right. Okay, as we're walking back to the rig, there's 5 common categories of plants that people have died from. Top 2, the folks trying to get high. So the anti-cholinergics, which are things like Brumangia, Datura, atropamine, scopamine, which I don't really know enough about those plants to tell you. And I wouldn't tell you anyway. My son's here, so.
You know, I'm just gonna try to be choking up and stuff. Yeah.
Now, the second category is the hallucinogenics, things like kratom, I don't even know what other. I mean, I know what a hallucinogenic is, not from experience. But I don't know what plants would be considered in this category. The next ones are the gastrointestinal irritants.
So people take that?
Well, those are the people. Those are ones that are like people are like unintentionally taking.
Oh, okay.
And then we've got the cardiac glycosides.
Oh, that doesn't sound good.
No, that does not sound good. And then the stimulants, which are things like ephedra and coffee.
Coffee?
Yeah, so that's like considered a plant, right? And so like sometimes people like maybe eat too many coffee beans, chocolate covered coffee beans, or like you're dieting and so you're using like an ephedra based thing, like a over the counter stimulant. And so that's a common one that people get sick. So like the only one in here, well, there's two categories: gastrointestinal irritants or cardiac glycosides that could be really the foraged categories. Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
If you get high unintentionally while foraging, let Tara know. She's super curious.
So bad.
So we talked about those like top 5 categories that like of dangerous plants. We had like the hallucinogens and I can't remember, the cholerogenics and the gastrointestinal irritants and blah, blah, blah. But I wanted to find out what was poisonous in Oregon. So I got this article from 91, published by OSU, so a reputable source. And I started looking in here, and some of the things I found that was like really interesting was like things like dock are listed in here, like dock that's growing around here that we did an episode about. Check that episode out. Hey, subscribe and hit the bell button.
The bell
It doesn't look like
Thumbs
a bell
up.
to me. And thumbs
Bell,
up,
thumbs up, subscribe.
please. I'll do cartwheels when we get to 100. We're at 70 something.
That'll do 50
No,
cartwheels.
I'm doing 100 cartwheels in a row after eating a bunch of wild foods. True story. Okay, so dock, like things like dock are listed in here. Things like the horsetail, another one we did an episode of. Like things like apricots. I didn't know they were dangerous. I eat them all the time.
Cherries.
Cherries, tomatoes, nettles, plums, like all sorts of different plants that are like commonly not associated with like you getting harmed are listed as potentially poisonous.
Yeah.
So I wanted to, I found another article that I thought was pretty interesting. And so there's other plants that are potentially dangerous as well. So there's a plant, you could just eat like 2 grams of it. It's got this stuff called phytohemagglutinin.
Remember that.
Phytohemagglutinin, whatever, something like that. And like, if you eat like 2 grams, violent stomach cramping, nausea, diarrhea, both ends.
Man.
Oof.
Sounds bad, right?
What is it?
Kidney beans. If you don't cook your kidney beans enough, but you don't see toxic food labels on kidney beans like anywhere.
No.
Or lima beans, or cherries,
Or apricots.
apricots, plums, all of which if those seeds get crushed, the amygdalin in those seeds forms cyanide, which can obviously kill you. Another one, there's a plant. It's got this stuff called oxalic acid, and if you were to eat a bunch of it, it could kill you. Kill you. Any ideas?
No, I don't know this one.
Rhubarb.
Oh yeah, rhubarb.
Rhubarb.
But we make rhubarb pie.
Yeah.
So if you eat too much rhubarb, it could kill you.
Right. And so that's the things like dock also have oxalic acid in them. That's what gives it that lemony or oxalis. So yeah, if you were to eat like 25 pounds of it, you might do yourself in. So don't eat 25 pounds of oxalis or dock
Or rhubarb.
or rhubarb.
I do like strawberry rhubarb pie.
Interestingly enough, it's 11 pounds of rhubarb.
Oh,
So-
how did they know that? That's so crazy.
It's 25 grams of oxalic acid in its purest form. So they can deduce based on. But
Okay.
the reality is this. So there's like, yes, things can be potentially dangerous. You have to know how to cook them. You have to know how to prepare them, and don't absolutely gorge yourself on wild foods, especially if it's the first time you're eating them.
Okay, hold on. Well,
I
let's
did-
not absolutely gorge ourselves with any food, because if I go eat a ton of candy bars, I can't imagine that being good for me either. So
Yeah.
let's just.
I guess it's true. I did gorge myself on those cow parsnips. They're so good.
And
And I regretted it.
I did too. Yes, we will as soon as we're done with this.
Is that all I have to say right now on this part? I think so. So, be careful. Identify it. Don't
And there's
cord yourself.
things that can hurt us that are right there in our grocery
Yeah.
store but you're not going to eat that much.
And on that note, if you want to talk about toxic foods, we're going to go there later on.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about toxic food.
Okay. Yes.
In this area, let's not even say this area, because it's not in this area. It's like all over the place. It's all over the U.S. So the plants that can kill you are this. Digitalis. We're going to show you what digitalis looks like. The foxglove.
Foxglove.
Okay?
Yes.
Dad, let's hide.
Also, there's been some reports of water hemlock killing folks. Not in the last 10 years, though. So interestingly, like there was like a rash, or like there was like more, like up to 35% of the deaths for a period of time were related to water or poison hemlock, but not in the last 9 or 10 years. So education must have got better in that period of time.
Okay, yes.
No one's dying from it anymore. We're going to show you the water hemlock. Those are the two that we believe are really the ones to know, because according to all the evidence, no one's not really, unless you're getting high or unless you're trying to kill yourself, no one's died from anything else but those two species. There's a couple reports someone got sick from eating a bunch of plants. They're attributing the death to garlic. Maybe too much. I don't know what the deal was. There's another one where they're not exactly sure what the plant was, but they're attributing it to something in the Pinus genus, so some sort of a pine species that aren't known to be toxic. So maybe it was like the cambium and they ate too much and they like impacted their... I mean, I don't want to read into it too much because I don't know.
Yes.
But other than that, it's people trying to get high or committing suicide.
Yeah. So, if you know your knowledge of the plants that are going to kill you, you're going to be okay.
Yeah, so know the water hemlock, and there's two species here. There's the western water hemlock and the poison hemlock. They look very similar. We're going to show you how to identify those easily. And then know digitalis. And that's like the statistical chance of you dying if you don't eat one of those is like slim to none. Unless you're trying to get high. And then all bets off. Don't do drugs, Caden, or anyone else. So, digitalis, common name, foxglove. This species is Digitalis purpura, I think is the name you say that. And digitalis is actually the Latin word for thimble. You can see how it got that name. Digitalis is also, it's got cardiac glycosides, which are used to make a, I believe it's a heart medicine, and very popular species for that. Also, as we've been talking about, a toxic species. And so, if you're in the Pacific Northwest, if you're anywhere that digitalis grows, this is one of the species that you absolutely have to be able to identify. It's not a lot really looks like it. I guess potentially fireweed, but I don't know if that grows in the area. And then I have heard that some folks get poisoned for mistaking it for borage, which to me doesn't look a lot like it. But I'll put a picture of some borage up as well. And so if we just get a closer look, you can just see those flowers.
They're beautiful.
Beautiful flowers, really cool. And you can see the leaves as well. So, we looked around for water hemlock, or poison hemlock, all day. There's 4 species of the, what is it, Circuta genus? C-I-R-C-U-T-A genus. Two in this area of Oregon, the poison hemlock and the water hemlock. Luckily, or unluckily, depending on how you look at it, we found one here. So this is what the hemlock looks like. This one's not in bloom yet. Don't be confused. We got the yarrow here, and if you spin around and turn us, we got the cow parsnip up there. So some of the other things too, here, you want me to take it?
And show them the.
Some of the other things to look for, sometimes it's got the red on the margins. That's a pretty typical feature. I wish that these flowers were a little further along, because you could see that in general they're a little less dense than the cow parsnip or the carrot or even the yarrow, which isn't even in the same family. But yeah, so water hemlock, and you can see there's a lot. There's a flower right there growing around here. All of this, not all of that, but all of this right here, water hemlock. So another identifying feature of the poison hemlock, or you can see that it's got these so this is the portion I just dug up a root, opened it up, and you can see these very distinct series of chambers inside. So that's a very good identifier. Here, let's see if we can get this one to do the same thing. We're gonna cook these up and eat them later. Just kidding. So let's see if we can cut it a little bit too deep. Again, you can see those chambers. So,
Water hemlock. Stay away from it.
stay away.
Don't eat it.
Put that somewhere else. On the Claytonia.
Mom!
I can't believe you've done this.
Yikes.
So we wanted to talk about toxic foods. And where'd we just go?
To the grocery store.
Specifically,
Walmart, to be
Walmart.
exact.
It's crowded. It was horrible. Don't recommend it. Don't ever go to Walmart. Horrible. Every time I go, I'm like, why did I go there? Long story short, toxic food everywhere. So Mountain Dew Code Red, 6 times the caffeine of normal Mountain Dew, full of sugar, no warning label.
No.
Like hydrogenated oils, canola oil, sugar, stuff you can't pronounce. Like you could point to a box or a package of most of that food at Walmart, and let's not pick on Walmart, grocery stores.
Yeah, we're in the grocery food section, so.
You could point to a box of processed food, and you couldn't tell me what plant or animal it came from.
Cosmic brownies, for example.
I wish they grew on trees.
Dude.
Anything from Hostess.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, that stuff is, if you look at the numbers, so this is on an annual basis in the U.S., #1 risk factor of death, dietary risks, other than BMI. So not your weight. So other than not getting a lack of nutrition, poor nutrition. #1, 600,000 deaths annually. High blood pressure, 500,000 deaths annually. High body mass index.
That's a year, not the 35 years. That's in 1 year.
400,000 deaths annually. Low physical activity, 100,000. So, and let's be real, like cosmic brownies, Twinkies, all that stuff, hot dogs, like you name it. I love that stuff.
Who doesn't?
Like,
I mean,
it
tastes good.
I by no stretch of the imagination am any sort of a saint. But if you work towards incorporating more wild foods into your diet, you're displacing some of that less nutritious crap. You're getting exercise. You're getting your family out in the woods. You're having a fun time doing it.
Yeah.
It's local. It's organic. It's free. We talk about that stuff all the time. This is much more of a risk than you eating the wrong plant. I guarantee that by thousands and thousands of times over. So you want to talk about toxic foods, start thinking about the toxic stuff that you're buying in the grocery store as opposed to
slowly killing you.
Yeah. And sometimes not even that slowly. Okay, last thing I want to say, and I know this one's going to be a lot of like just talking, and the reality of it is I didn't know how to do this one any other way. About a 0.00003% chance of dying from a plant in the US. Minuscule. Of course, you're in a higher risk category if you're going to be out foraging. That's undoubtedly true. The chance you have of dying from eating a wild plant is dwarfed by the chance you're taking and getting in your car and driving to your foraging spot. The reality is CDC says you have a 1 in 77 chance of dying in a car accident compared to a 0.00003 for dying from eating a plant. You have a 50,000 times greater chance of dying on your way to the foraging spot by driving your car there. So, do you need to be careful? Absolutely. Do you need to identify your plants? Smart thing to do.
Wait, what could happen if you don't identify them?
Die in the woods.
Yep.
We ain't asking for money, we just wanna make change. We do it for all of the people who need it, cause they got a voice and a name. I can't believe how we living today. I got this anger and sadness and pain. They can build walls, but we can build bridges, and we can be part of the change. Way,